It was an extremely sunny day when I got out of the airport that day. I'd just gotten off a long flight after my month-long vacation in Switzerland came to an end. I had hoped summer would have ended by the time I got home, but the beads of sweat that ran down my forehead as soon as I left the air-conditioned sanctuary of the airport told me I should have stayed another week or so in the snowy mountains of Europe. I packed my luggage into my Uber in a hurry, desperate to escape the heat and to finally melt onto my California king bed. I could almost feel the breeze on that cliffside coming in through my bedroom windows now, I thought to myself, longing for a good afternoon nap away from it all, away from people, away from tourists, away from never-ending activity. It was days like these when I really saw the value of living off the grid, in a house I built myself, far from the city. But when the car finally sped off and I turned the key to my home, the scene inside made my heart stop. "Hello?" I said into the eerily quiet house. No answer came. I hardly even invited any friends and family to come over, much less have them here when I'm on holidays, so my mind began to race as I tried to make sense of the mess in the living room. There were clothes strewn all around. The furniture wasn't how I left it, and a strong scent of vanilla hung in the air. At the far end of my open-plan space, the kitchen was a scene of carnage. The fridge was left ajar, some of its contents discarded on the floor, while most of it lay opened and half-eaten on the kitchen counter. There was a towering stack of empty pizza boxes on one of the counters, and the coffee maker was heating up a freshly made cup. My knees began to buckle. Not only was I broken into, I thought, worse still, they're still here. I didn't know what to do. Should I run? I thought to myself. Call the police? Any sane person would. But for some reason, my brain stopped listening to my instincts, and instead, my body led me towards my room. I took the sword that had hung in the hallway as I slowly made my way to the half-open door that led to my bed. How a wood and foam sword could help? I couldn't tell you. But like I said, my brain stops working pretty quickly in situations that required confrontation. I carefully pushed my bedroom door wide open, and what I saw both shocked me and threw me into an ocean of confusion. Lying in my bed, asleep, and looking as comfortable as anyone can be, were two blonde girls. The clothing that I'd seen in the living room suddenly made sense. I was wondering where those came from, as the only women who ever came to my house were my mother and my aunts. I was about to wake them up, unsure of why or how, when suddenly a voice came from the balcony. "We were wondering when you'd be home, hon," she said. I jumped from fright and let out a high-pitched squeal. And when I turned to face the balcony that led to the view of the cliffside, I saw the source of the sweet voice that startled me. Standing between the white sheer curtains that billowed in the breeze, with the bright sunlight outlining her like she was some sort of apparition, was probably the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. She had a half-finished book in her hands and a smile on her flushed face. Her skin was pink from the amount of time she'd spent under the seaside sun. She walked towards me and planted a kiss on my cheek. "Welcome home," she whispered. What? I stammered. The girl took my hand and in the same hushed voice told me, "Let them rest. They had a wild night." I regained my ability to speak, and without missing a beat, I said, "I saw." "Sorry about the mess, honey. We've been so busy lately, and the chores started stacking up," she said. "Come sit with me in the balcony. The breeze is lovely today." Honey? No one's ever called me that before, I thought. As she led me to sit on a pair of sun loungers that gave us a stunning view of the coast, she brushed a stray lock of light chocolate hair behind her ear and asked, "You want a coffee? I just brewed a fresh batch." "I saw," I said again. No, but thanks." As I sat there, staring at her as she sipped my coffee out of my mug, my brain went back online. Who is she? Who are those other two girls? I thought. Why does she act like she's lived here all her life? Why does she talk to me as if she'd known me for a long time? Why is she calling me honey? Do I have amnesia? Am I just forgetting this huge chunk of my life And I actually have a girlfriend? As soon as I asked myself that last question, I immediately knew that was an impossible scenario. Me? Have a girlfriend? I could barely say a full sentence in front of any girl, much less an exceptionally pretty girl like her. I almost laughed out loud. She must have noticed the amused look on my face because she asked, "What's on your mind, honey?" When she spoke, her voice was so sweet, so melodic. It was almost disrespectful not to answer, so I said, "Oh, nothing. I just think you're really pretty." She blushed, and that was that. I was captured. Fine, you can stay the night. I'll deal with it in the morning, I thought. From what I could piece together from overhearing their conversations, the girls were tourists, but not at all in the traditional sense of the word. They travel to places as tourists, that much was true, but to save on hotel costs, they break into people's houses when the owners are on holiday. It was a brilliant system, I had to admit. Travel on the cheap, live like queens in rich people's houses without paying for it. I couldn't fault it, except the trouble was that my house was their most recent target. The last stop in their holiday, if I heard them right. They'd been breaking into a string of empty houses down the coast during their 6-month holiday, and to end their little spree, they chose my place. Just my luck, I thought. I learned that her name was Angie, probably short for Angela since she was so angelic. Ugh, I make myself puke the way I get so cheesy. And the blonde twins that I saw sleeping on my bed that first day were called Sarah and Kara. It was confusing at first, but I could pretty much tell them apart by the second week. Sarah would only call me Hun, and has a softer voice. Kara was more serious, and would always call me Honey. Angela, however, would interchange between the two words. She was also the only one of them who could cook, when she wants to. As soon as I found out, the house was a mess because the girls were always out, and if they weren't, they were so tired or lazy that they didn't have time, energy, or willingness to clean up. On Fridays, they would head to the beach. Angie would charge beachgoers for henna tattoos, and the twins would braid people's hair, or make them custom beaded bracelets for a small fee. That was how they financed their travels. I found that out on the third weekend that they stayed with me, and if I wasn't so annoyed that they were still living in my house, I would have admired them for how enterprising they were. You could say it was partly my fault, maybe. Any normal person would call the police or simply throw them out the first day, I get it. But I simply couldn't. I stutter when I talk to girls. I can barely form a sentence. And as far as the cops are concerned, I wouldn't know how to deal with the drama of having 3 girls dragged away from my property. I just can't handle confrontation. So when they called me Honey, I called them Honey back. When they asked for food, I cooked. When they wanted to go on trips, I took them. When they left a mess, I cleaned after them, and when they went to the beach to earn their keep, I went with them. One Friday, Sarah came up to me as I was reading on the beach, waiting for the girls to finish their work for the day. "Hey, Louie," she began. Hun, I was wondering—" "Yes?" I said. She looked up at me with wide eyes as if she was afraid to say what she wanted. "Well, I noticed you always took Angie places. Like you'd go on walks with her and such. I'm not jealous, I swear. Could you spend as much time with me too as you do with Angie? Our holiday's almost up, and I would like to go out with you too, hun." She trembled. I almost found it silly how a stranger would feel jealous about something like that. But when I saw how tears were pooling in Sarah's eyes, it melted me. Suddenly I wanted to make this stranger happy. You might be thinking I'm just an awkward guy who's really bad at handling any type of emotion. Well, you'd be right. I dropped what I was reading and got on my knees. I'll take you somewhere special tomorrow," I managed to say. Sarah's face lit up and she sniffed back her tears. Bullet dodged, I said to myself. The next morning, I loaded my car's back seat with a picnic basket, a blanket, and a bottle of peach iced tea, Sarah's favorite. We drove to one of the hilltops in the area. It was a small hill that overlooked the town. On top of it, a huge oak tree grew alone, providing us with all the shade we needed. As we finished our sandwiches and tossed our last glass of iced tea, Kara kissed me on the cheek and giggled. "I'm going to miss you, you know," she said. looking away to gaze at a distant town. Miss me? I said stupidly. Yeah, when we go, said Sarah. When you go? Well, Sarah explained, we know we can't stay with you forever. But while we're here, I'm glad I get to spend time with you. And the girls and I are really happy you've been so nice to us. I didn't know what to say. I thought they'd never leave, but now that they are, I somehow felt sad. I'll miss you too, was all I could say. Better get going, Sarah said as she stood up and dusted crumbs off her skirt. The girls must be worried. I could hear a little tremble in Sarah's voice as if she was trying to hold back tears. When we got home, Angie and Kara were waiting for us. Kara's face told me something was wrong. I was about to ask when she told me. It's not fair, she shouted. Huh? Wait, what? I said, confused. You've taken both of them on dates and you haven't taken me, Kara complained. She was right, of course. And so, later that weekend, I did. And then I took Angie out. And at some point, we all went out on dates together. The funny thing was, I never had a girlfriend before. Then one day, the three of them just showed up and started treating me like I was their boyfriend. The girls ended up staying with me. How? I don't remember. It just happened. Just like how they just happened to me one late summer day. Boy, wasn't I glad they weren't burglars.